So Attack on Titan is finally ending, and as a huge fan of the series, I have decided to make a video about the last 14 years of Attack on Titan. Let's go. Before I can talk about Attack on Titan, I have to talk about its creator, Hajime Isayama. Isayama was born on August 29, 1986 in Oyama, Oita, Japan. Isayama grew up in a rural town in Japan and was influenced by the local environment, particularly the isolation and the sense of being surrounded by nature. These elements would later find their way into the world building of Attack on Titan. Isayama's interest in manga and storytelling developed at a young age. He was drawn to manga series like Miyazaki's Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind and Otomo's Akira, both of which had a significant impact on his creative aspirations. When Isayama decided to pursue a career as a manga artist, he faced numerous challenges and rejections. He submitted his work to multiple publishers, only to be turned down repeatedly. His determination to succeed despite these setbacks is a testament to his dedication. Isayama continued to work on his art and storytelling skills, and he was not deterred by the rejection letters. He sought opportunities to learn and improve his craft, which eventually led to the development of Shingeki no Kyojin, with the English translated name being Attack on Titan. The concept for Attack on Titan had been brewing in Isayama's mind for years. He said that he had the draft concept for AOT in his mind back when he was still finishing up school, so it was probably very different to what we know now. He finally got his breakthrough when Kodansha's Basatsu Shonen magazine took a chance on his work. I have no clue if I said that correctly. It was in the pages of this magazine that Attack on Titan made its debut in 2009. The series quickly gained popularity due to its unique and dark narrative, complex characters, and the interesting world of Titans. Isayama's editor said he'd take on his work because he believed in the story. However, he did tell Isayama that the artwork needed drastic improvement. If you look at the manga from its early chapters, you can visibly see the improvement of Isayama's art. The story's popularity was evident even before the anime adaptation, with its manga volume selling approximately 500,000 copies within the first month. And now that we've talked about the creator of the AOT manga, let's talk about the creator of the first AOT anime series, Wit Studio. Wit Studio started as a subsidiary of Production IG, a renowned anime production company. If you watch enough anime, you've definitely seen something that they've created. Tetsuya Nakatake, a veteran anime producer with experience at Production IG, played a significant role in the foundation of Wit Studio. He served as the studio's first president and continued to be closely associated with the studio's projects. Wit Studio's early projects included assisting with production on notable series like Guilty Crown and Hal. However, the studio rose to prominence with its involvement in the anime adaptation of AOT. The first season of AOT aired in 2013 and became a massive hit, which drew international attention to both the series and the studio. One of the defining things about Wit is its commitment to producing high-quality animation with a unique visual style. The studio is known for its impressive action sequences and dynamic animation, which contributed to the overall success of Attack on Titan. I'll talk about them more as we go throughout the video, but for now, let's take a look back at Attack on Titan. Episode 1 of Attack on Titan is one of the best first anime episodes I've ever seen. Opening with that horrific shot of the Colossal Titan on the wall, we see our main characters completely scared out of their mind and then it just cuts away. We get all these scenes in the episode that are just going to be brought back later. It's incredible. There's really not much to say because it is just that good of an episode. We also got a good number of Colossal Titan memes out of this. Episode 2 is when we get the Armor Titan introduced and we get Eren's famous declaration. Then the episode slows down a bit and we get introduced into the Survey Corps stuff. By the way, that scene of the Armor Titan breaking through the walls of Shiganshina is beautiful. Episode 3 we get the rest of the main cast as well as potato memes that are never ending. Episode 4 is one of the most insane endings for this series, and believe me, it won't be the last. Episode 5, all hell breaks loose and basically sets the tone for the rest of the series. I know we kinda got that in episode 1, but seeing all these characters die in front of our eyes is a little bit more impactful. Episode 6 is all about child trafficking and murdering children, and it will be extremely relevant for the rest of the series. Episode 7 and 8, the main cast just fumbles around with a bunch of titans until Eren comes and kills most of them and then reveals he's alive again. Episode 9, you can hear Fangirl screaming as it's the first appearance of Captain Levi, and we will never stop simping for him. Also, Eren transforms again and Armin convinces the military not to kill him. That happens in episode 10. Episodes 11, 12, and 13 are the conclusion for the Battle of Trust. Basically, Eren has knocked himself out, so we have to wait 2 episodes for him to get up, block the hole in the wall, and then get saved by Levi. Also, we had Rico for this arc. We like Rico, but she will not be relevant past this arc. Episode 14 is an instigator for all those Eren x Levi Yaoi fanfics. Episodes 15 to 16 are slower episodes where we focus on Levi's squad, and by Levi's squad I mean Levi, Hanji, and Petra. Episode 17 to 22 is about the 57th Exterior Scouting Mission, where we get the first debut of the female Titan, and trust me, we've had plenty of jokes about her. Basically, the female Titan kills most of the scouts, it gets captured, not really, then the Levi squad dies, Eren almost gets captured, then we get the Levi Beyblade scene, and that's the end of the scout mission. In episodes 23 to 25, Annie is exposed as the female Titan. Annie and Eren have their rematch, and she ends up crystallized. Also, I can't watch this fight anymore without thinking about the Malaysian censorship meme. We get the Titan in the wall reveal, and that's the end of Season 1. If you want my opinions on the OVAs, A Notebook 1 is the most interesting and most relevant one. The Jean one is funny and wholesome, and that reimagined OP is great, and the training one is fine. I'll also briefly talk about the OPs and EDs since AOT is known for its amazing music. I'm not a music person, so don't expect a deep analysis as to which songs are good, which are bad. I think they're all fine. OP1 is iconic, OP2 is also iconic but not as much. ED1 is pretty and ED2 has a nice intensity to it. So AOT Season 1 was, in my opinion, pretty good. There are some issues such as animation being weak at times, and there are some issues with the story changes as well, seeing as how there's plenty of panels that people who read the manga wanted to see, but unfortunately they just weren't included. And for the most part, it's not too bad. Although when it comes to Mikasa, it's a little bit more annoying just because her whole character is, I need to protect Eren, and there are just scenes changed or removed where she does talk about other things. It's not the worst injustice in the world, because Mikasa isn't necessarily the strongest character, but it is still a little bit of a letdown. Before we get into Season 2, we have to address the 4-year gap between Season 1 and Season 2 of Attack on Titan. Season 1 finished in 2013, and Season 2 didn't start until 2017. Now, there's a few reasons as to why that is. For starters, it takes very long for episodes to be animated as they are very detailed. And AOT, despite its huge success in the first season, wasn't as high a priority for Wit Studio. During the gap between Season 1 and 2, the studio animated a bunch of different things. Another reason, and most likely the main reason, is that the manga was too close to the end of Season 1, and the studio wanted to wait and distance the adaptation from the source content. The problem was that Attack on Titan was a monthly format, meaning that it would take a long time for them to distance themselves from the source content. But when Season 2 finished, Wit decided to prioritize AOT, which is why we got both parts of Season 3 much quicker. Anyway, let's move on to Season 2. Season 2 picks up immediately from the end of the first season with the introduction of the Beast Titan, and with his arrival we will have many monkey memes for years to come. Episode 27 is an alright episode that will be more relevant later on. Episode 28 is an okay episode which kickstarts the action for this season. Episodes 29 and 30 are all teasers for character backstories. We have the first instance of Reiner experiencing PTSD, we have Ymir transforming into a Titan for the first time. By the way, Ymir's Titan form was known as a Dancing Titan just because there wasn't an official name for it yet, and we get teasers of Historia's royal heritage. This is definitely when the season starts to get good. Episode 31 is another one of those perfect episodes. All of the build-up, all of the character emotions, leading to the climax where you have the most iconic scene from this anime. Well, one of the most iconic scenes, you know the scene, you know the song, nothing else to say, it's absolute perfection. Episode 32 is exactly what the title says, close combat between Eren and Reiner for 20 minutes. I love seeing all this MMA-inspired brawling between titans, it's great. Also, this is when people started complaining about the Colossal Titan being in CGI, and to be honest, it's not as bad as I remember, but I still understand why people don't like it. Also, this episode ends in one of the most frustrating cliffhangers. That's not a point against it, I'm just saying. Episode 33 is a slow episode to cool off from all the action we just had, and what's discussed in the episode becomes more apparent and more relevant later on. Episode 34 is a 20-minute discussion between Ymir, Eren, Reiner, and Bertold, and to be honest, I'm here for it. I like everything that's being talked about in the episode, I like all the different character interactions. I have to mention Yoshimasa Hosea, who is the voice actor of Reiner. His lines as Reiner in this episode are amazing. And while some people didn't like Eren due to him screaming and being angry all the time, you can't deny that Yuki Kaji always does an amazing job of portraying that. Not much else to say other than this was a great episode. Episode 35 is Ymir's backstory. I will say when I first watched this in 2017, Ymir was not a character that I cared that much about. I didn't hate her or anything, I just thought that the most interesting parts about Ymir were more to do with the world these characters live in and not Ymir herself. Looking back on it, I do like her story, being worshipped, being betrayed, not wanting to trust or care about anyone else until she meets Historia, and eventually dying on her own terms. It's a nice character arc. Pretty good episode. Episode 36 is... No, but seriously, this is a really good episode. Bertolt's breakdown speech was great, the action was great, and we get another really good cliffhanger as well. Episode 37 and the season 2 finale is here. We get a brutal death, more great voice acting, love confession missing a kiss that Isayama didn't want to put in, or couldn't put in, and the first actual use of the coordinates power. Great way to end the season. So that was season 2. It started off a bit slow, but once we got into it, it really kept going. The first half of season 1 focused on Eren, Mikasa, Armin, and Jean, and the second half of the season focused on Eren, Levi, his squad, Hanji, and Owen. I will say in season 2 that all the characters feel relevant. Yes, there's focus on specific ones, but what I mean is everyone feels like they're doing something. Because we were focusing on the main trio during the first half of season 1, there's not really much for the other characters to do. And by the time we get to the scouting mission, Levi's squad is the only one that gets any real focus, and they all end up dead anyway. That's not so much a criticism as it is just something to point out. This season really did set up some characters to be more important in the future. It also both answered questions and created new ones, and there were plenty of fan theories to go around. Overall, I would say season 2 is just as good as season 1. I'd probably rank them both 7 out of 10. So there's some OVAs to talk about before we get into season 3. So we have Attack on Titan Lost Girls. This is a Japanese novel written by Hiroshi Seko. It was turned into a manga, then Wit Studio made a 3-part OVA series about it. Basically, the plots of these OVAs focus on Mikasa and Annie. In Annie's story, she plays a detective trying to find a missing girl. She also finds the root cause of the drug trafficking problem in the city. Mikasa's story is essentially a what-if scenario. In this reality, Mikasa's parents were never killed and she gets to have a nice peaceful life with them alongside Eren and Armin. However, she's told by a masked figure that she can't avoid Eren's fate. Obviously, that will hold more meaning as the series goes on. I definitely prefer these OVAs to the ones you've already talked about. Not because those ones were particularly bad or anything. It's just because these characters are extremely popular, but at this point in the show, there's not a huge amount to them. So it is nice to just get a little bit more insight into their characters. I like how Annie's mission is set just before she has to go and catch Eren in the 57th scouting mission. She has to deal with her emotions while dealing with this whole mystery story she got forced upon her. It's definitely an interesting watch. Mikasa's story is interesting too, but for a different reason. This story does showcase Eren and Mikasa's dynamic and what they mean to each other, and who they are as characters. Whether you like these characters or not is another thing, but it's definitely an insightful look. I also do just appreciate the general happiness that's showcased in this episode. It is nice to see that in Attack on Titan, where it's very difficult to get those kind of moments. And now we'll talk about AOT No Regrets. AOT No Regrets is a manga series written by Gunsnark and illustrated by Hikaru Saruga. It was based off a VN of the same name. We got 2 OVA episodes about this story. This story is about Levi and who he was before he joined the Survey Corps, and how he eventually joins up and starts following Erwin. I do like this OVA quite a bit. Levi and Owen are fan favourite characters, so it does make sense to give them more backstory. This OVA actually came out after Season 1 and before Season 2. I decided to talk about it here since we're going into Season 3 and that heavily focuses on Levi. Also, this OVA is responsible for all those God Mode Levi edits you might see, so think of that what you will. Okay, now quickly mention Season 2's OP and ED. The Season 2 OP and the Season 2 ending has a nice creepy atmosphere and some good foreshadowing. Anyway, on to Season 3, Part 1. Episode 38. That's all I need to say. Episode 39 is that one animation sequence that everyone loves, everyone has reacted to, and everyone has used as an argument for defending how good Wit Studio's animation is. Episodes 40, 41, and 42 are about Historia's backstory, Annie's military police friends joining the team temporarily, and the military overthrowing the current government. Episode 43 is one of those AOT episodes where we get 2 answers to questions we've been having and then like 100 more questions on top of it. Great to see it, love this episode. Episode 44 might be the best part of this season so far. We have this incredible opening fight scene, we have Eren's emotional breakdown and Yuki Kaji delivers as always, and we have another intense cliffhanger. Again, one of the best episodes of the season so far. Episodes 45 and 46 are about a fight with the biggest titan we've seen so far. Episodes 47 and 48 are both backstory episodes. Episode 47 is Kenny's backstory, which ends up with him dead at the end of it, and episode 48 is about Keith Shardis, and we get to learn about his history as well as a bit of Grisha's. Not to mention this episode ends with a reprisal of my favourite line in the series. Episode 49 is the finale for Season 3, Part 1. It's essentially a calm before the storm episode, with all of the main cast having fun and having some insightful discussions about the future. And of course, this episode has the mid-credits scene that shocked everyone. So that was Season 3, Part 1, and I've got mixed thoughts about it. I love the introduction of Kenny, he's great fun and he really adds a lot to Levi's character. It's just a shame that unfortunately he's dead. I'm not exactly sure what else could have been done with him, but I am just sad that we lost him early. In my personal opinion, this season didn't really pick up until we got to the race chapel. That's not me saying that none of the government stuff was interesting, it's just not as interesting as the stuff that happened in the second half of the season. Or I should say the second half of Season 3, Part 1. And I think some of this has to do with the changes that they made to this particular arc. Now, one of the biggest criticisms of Wit is how they choose to adapt the story of AOT. There was already a lot of meaningful scenes omitted in the first 2 seasons of AOT, but in the Uprising arc they seem to have left out a lot of significant stuff. It seems like this was done in order to better pace the season, but it does take away from some of the overall impact. I wouldn't know because I wasn't a manga reader at this point in time. Whilst I do like this season, I would still put it below seasons 1 and 2. Again, it's not because we're focusing more on politics than action. Some of the best episodes in this show are just characters talking for the majority of it. I don't know, it just doesn't land for me, and maybe if they had adapted it accurately, maybe it would be better. I'll quickly talk about the OP and the ED. The OP is a nice refreshing pace from all the high intensity ones we've had so far, and I like how the ED is done in a similar way to Mikasa's one from season 1. And now we move on to what could be argued as one of the best, if not the best, arc in Attack on Titan. It's time for Season 3, Part 2. So episode 50 has all of the main cast finally returning to Shiganshina. This episode is essentially set up for what's going to be an incredible battle. We also leave the episode on a great cliffhanger. Episode 51 is the Eren vs Reiner rematch we've all been waiting for. Also, we get the introduction of the Thunder Spears. Episode 52 is an episode I love purely because of Bertold and Armin. Both of them essentially have to accept the responsibilities and do what must be done. Okay, now the next 3 episodes are very significant. They are, to this day, some of the highest rated episodes of AOT. Not just on anime sites like Mal, but IMDb too. If you go on high ranked TV episode lists on IMDb, you'll definitely find these episodes. Now let's talk about this incredible trio of episodes, starting with episode 53. 104 try to deal with Bertold to no avail. The Beast Titan plays baseball and kills everyone except Levi, Erwin, and the new scout recruits. All hope seems lost until Erwin devises one last plan, which is a suicide charge against the Beast Titan, and he delivers one final speech, and it's his best of the entire series. Now, a lot of people love Erwin's character. I do as well. This is just my personal opinion, but I do think he has the overall best character arc in the series. Him wanting to know the truth of the world and taking on the dreams his father once had, to him becoming a leader and convincing people to fight not just for humanity, but for the things he wants. And even though he gets so close to the answers he's been looking for his whole life, he gives up his life for the sake of humanity. Again, just a true 10 out of 10 character. Episode 54 can easily be considered the peak of Attack on Titan when it first came out. It's easy to see why, since we get the 3 Titan Shifters, who have been the main antagonists for this series so far, all defeated in the same episode. Levi defeats the Beast Titan as a result of Erwin and the other scouts' sacrifice, and it's easily one of the best animation sequences of this entire series. Reiner gets defeated by the rest of the 104, and Bertold the Colossal Titan, one of the main faces of this entire series, is taken down thanks to Armin's strategic thinking and self-sacrifice, and Eren finally gets to complete what he was trying to do in episode 5. By the way, those episodes are 6 years apart, so you know this scene was satisfying to watch. Episode 55 is another one of those Attack on Titan episodes where it's just talking and it is amazing to see. There's so many good voice performances happening here as all the survivors are just debating on who needs to survive. We sadly lose Erwin for good, but we now get Armin as the Colossal Titan, and Levi and Armin both have to carry a burden for the foreseeable future. Episode 56 is a cooldown episode and we finally get to see what's in the basement. That reveal has been hyped up ever since the series first came out. Episodes 57 and 58 are Grisha backstory episodes. These episodes answer so many questions that fans have been having for years. These episodes are info dumps done well and I'm surprised you managed to keep up the quality all the way to the end of the season. Episode 59 is all about planning for the future. The Paradise government is trying to work out what to do, seeing as they've just realized that they're the enemy of the entire world. We get a year's time skip, and then we finally get to see the sea that Armin has been talking about since like episode 1. Unfortunately, all the potential happiness we see quickly fades away when we get that Eren scene at the end, which is just so haunting, so amazing. I love it. Before I give my thoughts on the season, I'll quickly go over the OP and the ED. The OP is fine, it feels like a callback to the first one, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but this one is definitely my least favourite so far. I like how the ED is nostalgic, seeing as how we have not had Scout stuff for years. Also, while we're on the topic of music, Levi vs the Beast Titan was an outstanding scene that honestly is one of the highlights of the entire series. Although there were some people who were disappointed that the main theme of AOT wasn't used during the fight scene. You can argue whether it should have been used here or not, but the thing I always wonder about is that I've heard people say that it's a heroic theme when the lyrics and the times it's been used say otherwise. Like, I'm pretty sure that theme has only ever been played when all hell breaks loose and not like when one of our main characters is actually doing something cool or winning a fight. Just some food for thought. Now, Season 3 Part 2 was definitely what I consider one of the peaks of AOT. Whether it is the peak is up to your interpretation. I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest. What I will say is that most AOT fans probably feel the same way that I've just described. I think from Season 4 onwards is when we really started to get debates about what the high and low points of AOT were. I can confidently say that the majority of the AOT fandom would say that the Season 3 Part 2 is definitely one of the highest points of the entire franchise. It's also the last AOT anime arc done by Wit Studio, and they definitely go out with a bang. Of course, this meant that MAPPA, the animation studio that took over the production of AOT from this point onwards, had a lot to live up to. Unfortunately, there was backlash. A lot of backlash. So some fans consider this the ultimate clickbait, because the animation we got in Season 1 looks absolutely nothing like this. Now, if you're looking for answers as to why this trailer and the actual anime look so different, I think there's a couple. First off, this was a pre-animated trailer, meaning this was produced before any animation on the actual show had even begun. There might not have even been storyboards yet. Some people might think that there were different teams for the trailer and for the actual show, but based on all the information that's out there, it seems like the teams were mostly the same. It's also worth noting just how demanding the production schedule was for Attack on Titan Season 4. They basically had only 8 months to create 16 episodes, which is a really tight schedule for such a high-profile series. Also, we had the pandemic, which obviously would have caused some problems somewhere. As I said, there are a lot of problems that people had with MAPPA's adaptation of Attack on Titan. We can cover those as we go through the episodes, but for now, it's time for Attack on Titan Season 4, or I should say, the final season, Part 1. Episode 60, we're introduced to Mali, the land where Reiner, Zeke, and all these new warrior candidates are from. By the way, a good number of comments about this episode have to do with the CGI and how it doesn't look right. I wouldn't say bad necessarily, but like, you know, it's in the uncanny valley. Episode 61 is more character introduction and more exploration as to how Mali operates. Episode 62 is a masterpiece of a backstory episode. In this episode, we get to learn all about who Reiner was when he was younger, his relationships with his fellow warrior candidates, including Annie, Bertolt, and all the new characters. We get to see all the traumatic events that lead to him having a split personality in the future. And we get to see his parallels to Eren, who finally shows up in this season. By the way, that reveal works a lot better in the manga due to lack of voice acting. Episode 63 is another calm before the storm episode, and it has a great after-credits scene. Episode 64 is a masterpiece of fiction. I do appreciate all the lore stuff that's happening up on stage, but all I care about is Eren and Reiner's conversation. It's just so interesting to see who these characters are and how they interact with each other and how much all of that's changed since the beginning of the show. Aside from another jaw-dropping cliffhanger, there is a few things I want to talk about with this episode. So first off, if you watched this episode while it was airing, you'll remember the declaration of war was trending on Twitter, or X I should say. No, it was Twitter back then. Obviously, there must have been plenty of regular people who saw that and got freaked out. They probably started cursing out anime weebs after realizing what it actually was. Also, there were a lot of fans who were unhappy that they didn't use UC Big Girl for Eren's reveal on stage. That's the OST that was playing at the end of Season 2, Episode 6, but you already knew that, everyone knows that. My opinion is that it doesn't really fit in this scene, it's definitely a different context. However, I will say that the OST they did use was very underwhelming, so I'll give you that one. Also, this is the episode that pretty much kickstarted everyone saying Eren Yeager, 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 Eren Yeager. The last point I'll make is about Eren's character. You know, there's plenty of AOT fans who like the show but didn't like Eren necessarily up until this point. You get the one-track mind of getting into a fight and killing something, and the constant screaming might have been annoying to some people. But I always thought he was fine, not necessarily my favorite character, but I always thought he was okay. Also, I'm not siding with people who said he had no development up to this point. In Season 3, you could definitely see changes in him. Like, not just even at the end, like, he was constantly thinking throughout Season 3, who am I? What's my purpose? What am I doing? What do I need to do? So yeah, that's my brief Eren defense. Episodes 65 and 66 showcase the Mali forces versus the Survey Corps. We get introduced to the Warhammer Titan, who is one of my favorite of the 9. This is when people really started to complain about the CGI. Episode 67 is the reason the internet won't stop throwing hate towards a 12-year-old animated character. Might as well talk about Gabby here since I haven't really said anything about her yet. She's an obvious parallel to Eren. She's actually based off the original design for Eren. I know there were some people who didn't like Gabby before killing Sasha, but once she did, it basically cemented their hate for her. Which makes sense since Sasha was a character who has literally been here since the start. She might have gotten more hate than anyone else who plays an antagonistic role in the show. I wasn't as attached to Sasha as some people, so I honestly didn't care that much, but obviously in the manga and in the anime, people were furious. Episode 68 and 69, I'm not making the joke, are both backstory episodes which explain what's been happening on Paradise in the last 4 years. The most interesting thing to come out of these episodes is that Historia is pregnant, and honestly the answer is going to be very underwhelming. And we get that Eren scene of him saying "Tatakae." Episode 70 finally pays off Season 2, Episode 2. This is the episode where Gabby and Falco meet the girl that Sasha saved all those years ago, and Gabby's ideology is tested. Falco is basically the mediator between them. I will say I haven't mentioned Falco either, even though he's a very important character in this season. Falco is a good-natured person who's just basically been thrown into war. I'm not saying he's perfect, but it's easy to understand why everyone likes him. Whilst Gabby is an Eren parallel, you could argue that Falco is a Mikasa parallel due to him loving her, but he kind of embodies Armin's ideals a bit more, because his character is essentially who Armin used to be, and still is to some extent, just without all the sin. Just something I was thinking about. Episode 71 is when the Jaegerist faction is formed. Also, this episode has that one iconic panel that everyone keeps saying that MAPPA messed up. Episode 72 is when Gabby finally starts to question her ideals. Also, this is when the McDonald's meme happens. Episode 73 is when Eren gaslights the people he loves most in the world. We get both emotional damage and physical damage. Also, we get Levi versus the Beast Titan round 2, and this is an okay action sequence. Again, I don't hate this sequence or anything, but it's a little bit underwhelming, at least in comparison to what we've had before. Episode 74 is another really well done character backstory. This one focuses on Zeke and allows us to really sympathize with him for the first time. Episode 75 is the final season part 1's finale, and just like season 3 part 1, it's more of a calm before the storm episode. As for the OP and the ED, the OP was radically different to any of the ones we'd seen before, so it did take some people a while to get used to it, but eventually people came round. The ED sounds really nice and focuses on Falco, which kind of makes sense since he is the hope for a new generation. Well, him and Gabby, but you know how most people feel about Gabby. Not me, but most people. Now, when it comes to my thoughts on the final season part 1, I think it's on the same quality level as season 3 part 2, but just below it. The reason I say this is because I feel that once we leave Mali, the season starts to slow down in order to build tension, which isn't a bad thing, but it does mean we have to wait a few episodes in order for things to really kick off. Whereas in Return to Shiganshina, I felt that every episode was interesting in its own way. That being said, this season's highs are definitely up there with the highs of Return to Shiganshina, and they might even exceed them depending on what you're thinking. I will say all the Titan battles animated by MAPPA in this season, they're not awful, but they're definitely not as good as what we've had in the past. Again, there's plenty of real problems as to why that is. However, it does take my ranking down a little bit. Also, there's a lot of off-model character shots. Things like the new art style, which is more akin to Isayama's manga drawings, or the fact that certain manga panels weren't adapted correctly, as people would say, that doesn't bother me as much. Now, before we get into the final season part 2, we need to talk about the final chapter of Attack on Titan. So the final chapter of AOT was released on April 9th, 2021, and there was a reaction to it. I'm not going to go over every single aspect of the chapter, but we can at least start with this. So this face and this dialogue have become infamous in the anime community. People were just upset over the fact that Eren got super emotional, and some people were fine with the emotion, but annoyed about what he was emotional about. There are plenty of people who don't like Mikasa and Eren as a couple, or their relationship in general. I'm not one of those people, but I can at least understand what was going through their heads at the time this came out. There are definitely more things in this chapter that caused debates, but that panel has become infamous. People also made fun of the first translations when those came out, as well as how some plot points were resolved, and how certain characters were portrayed in the end. We also had extra pages released not long after the final chapter came out, and we had split opinion for those too as to whether they actually improved the story or not. The backlash for this final chapter was so insane when it first came out that we not only had people begging for an AoE, an anime original ending, we had plenty of fan projects pop up in order to rewrite the ending. The last thing I'll say is that if the anime decides to adapt this final chapter exactly the way it was published, then we're probably looking at the exact same kind of arguments that showed up the first time it came out. Me personally, I was kind of indifferent to the ending. Didn't love it, didn't hate it. I just felt that it was a bit rushed. And with that, let's move on to the final season, part 2. Episode 76 and 77 are episodes focusing on the battle between the Mali forces and the Paradise forces. This is essentially build up for the next batch of episodes, and trust me, they are going to be insane. Okay, so like Season 3 Part 2, we have 3 episodes in a row which are highly rated. I mentioned that in the first part of this season, Declaration of War and the 2 episodes after it were also highly ranked. It's just my personal opinion, but I think Declaration of War is a lot better than the 2 episodes after it, and that's just an execution thing more than anything else. The 3 episodes I'm going to talk about now are definitely on par with Season 3 Part 2's highest rated episodes, if not even higher. So episode 78, Two Brothers, features 3 sets of brothers. We have Colt and Falco. Colt dies and Falco becomes a Jaw Titan. We have Marcel and Porco lets Falco eat him after realizing what Marcel did to save his life. And then we have the main ones, which is Zeke and Eren. Eren's head gets blown off, and he catches him in order to let him into the paths. And then we get betrayal from both of the brothers and the episode ends on a massive cliffhanger. Episode 79 might be my all-time favorite talking episode in Attack on Titan. Okay, actually, let me talk about this episode. This episode is good, and I understand why so many people love it and why it's ranked so highly. However, I am one of those people who prefers the manga version more. I do just prefer the way things are framed and the way scenes are drawn in the manga. And this episode, when it first came out, had a lot of off-model shots. Not to mention I wasn't a fan of some of the framing choices they used. Being said, Grisha's breakdown at the end was an 11 out of 10 performance. This is the birth of that Eren meme where he's controlling everyone's lives. Episode 80 is one of the best parts of AOT. We get Ymir's backstory and the rumbling finally begins. Also, we got that Discord meme as well. Okay, I do love this episode, but one of the things I prefer in the manga was how Eren was talking to Ymir. Again, it's for similar reasons like I said for the last episode, but it really feels like they rushed Eren talking to Ymir just to get to the rumbling. You've probably seen one of those light and shadow edits on YouTube. Now, we were never going to get that, mainly because it's a League of Legends song. But those type of re-edits really make the scene a lot more powerful. Then again, maybe I'm just harping on it because it is one of my favourite moments in the series. The rumbling sequence was obviously perfection, nothing else to say about that. I will say that this is when people who said that AOT fell off started to dislike the manga. Episode 81 is the first MAPPA action scene that everyone agrees is good. Also, more importantly, Annie is finally back in the story. Episodes 82, 83, and 84 are all about the Alliance trying to stop the rumbling. Now, obviously, the Alliance is made up of the main Paradise cast and the main Mali cast. A lot of people didn't like the Alliance in the manga or in the anime. Although I will say the manga because usually they have the stronger opinions. I'm indifferent to the Alliance, but I can kind of understand why people don't like them. I'll just give a few reasons as to why. For starters, we have so many characters in this Alliance, so the odds of you hating or being neutral towards someone is very high. The second point's a bit of a paradox because there are people who don't like the Alliance because it just feels too rushed. With all these people willing to work together and even be nice to each other. But then there were plenty of people who were complaining that Eren wasn't in the manga and they wanted to see his perspective, so we had to wait for that. There was always going to be unhappy people when it came to that. The last point is about character interactions. People criticize the character interactions we did have, and also the ones we didn't get a chance to have. I kind of agree on the latter. We bring up Marco again, even though it's been a few years since he's been mentioned. Like, Annie is here and Levi doesn't even mention his squad to her. Like, we don't need a long, drawn-out conversation about it, but, some acknowledgement would be, good, I guess. You think Mikasa and Armin would have a proper conversation about Eren? You think Bertolt would come up in conversation, seeing as how a bunch of his comrades are right there? You can be on either side of the fence when it comes to these opinions, but it's clear the Alliance definitely caused a split opinion. Also trees. Episodes 85 and 86 are the Jaegerists versus the Alliance. These episodes are really good. It's great to see Annie and Reiner fighting together. We finally get to see Falco's Titan form. Connie's emotional state is very sad to watch. And we get that Mikasa killing sequence that everyone seems to love. And that one frame that everyone hates. I will say that this battle is a contentious point for the people who didn't like the Alliance. Mainly because we're fighting random Jaegerists and the only person of any relevance is Flock. Again, somehow I haven't talked about him even though he's one of the most relevant characters in this season. A lot of people don't like him and that might just be because he's a fascist. Or because he is the one leading the group that's antagonizing our main cast. I think most of it is due to the sadistic behavior he exhibits when having to carry out these things in the name of freedom. Like everyone else is doing messed up things too, but he seems to be the only one who's actually enjoying it while everyone else is depressed. Nevertheless, he definitely is an interesting character, and he remains one of the most consistent whereas he dies of his beliefs. Also, Magath and Shardis die. Gotta wonder what's going through Shardis' mind, seeing as how the son of the woman he loved is out there trying to destroy the world. With Magath, this is one of those rush points about the Alliance I was talking about. His worldview has lasted for one episode and he's going to die at the end of this battle, so it kinda seemed redundant. But we move on. Episode 87 might be the best episode of this season and maybe the entire series. We get that flashback scene that was supposed to come earlier but they moved it here. We get to see our characters interact with the outside world for the first time. We get a lot of emotional moments from Eren. We finally get a look into Eren's mind and what he's been going through. And we get the greatest action sequence, name drop, callback, and cliffhanger. Absolutely perfect episode. The OP is definitely appropriate for what's currently happening in the series, it's just not my type of music, and again, I have no music taste, so don't take that point too seriously. The ED is absolutely incredible, and I have listened to it so many times since it first came out, and I also love the special version they did with all the scenes from the anime. I genuinely got emotional while watching that. So that was Season 4 Part 2 and it was incredible. This set of episodes definitely had some of the highest points of the entire franchise. The animation is clearly a step up from Part 1 and that's clearly because of the time they were given. I will say my opinions of the story are kinda similar to that of Part 1. As in, once the rumbling starts, things kinda slow down a bit, which I know we need them to in order for the Alliance to work. Again, I already made points about the mixed feelings of the Alliance and I do have some of them, but again, it doesn't ruin the experience for me or anything. But like I already said, this was definitely one of the highest points of Attack on Titan. Now, we did have to wait some time for the final season, Part 3, Part 1. In the meantime, we got plenty of unfunny jokes about the naming convention of this season. Anyway, let's go to the final season, Part 3, Part 1. So this special starts off with Chapter 131 animated. Chapter 131 was a godsend for people who started to lose faith in the manga. Some people consider this the true peak of AOT and it's clear to see why. You have the horror of the rumbling killing all these people, beautifully animated, the animation just gets better and better. You get to watch the perspective of this kid who was already introduced in the flashback. You get to watch Eren's intense breakdown as he tells his innocent kid about all his deep dark thoughts, apologizing profusely for the atrocities he's going to commit. Watching this kid's gruesome demise. We have the freedom panel where we finally get to see Kid Eren get everything he ever wanted. This is the definition of peak fiction. We also get a tease for the ending, as well as a meaningful Armin and Annie conversation. Next, we have another extremely emotional moment with Hanji's death. She basically sacrifices her life fighting the Colossal Titans in order to buy time for the rest of the group to get away. This is all because Flock damaged the plane, and he gets to die believing he's done his duty, and we get to see Hanji in the afterlife for all the other Survey Corps members. This is definitely an impactful death. It also hits harder because they're using the OST from when Eren decided to believe in Levi's squad in episode 19. That death really hits you. Next, we have Eren's talk with everyone in the paths. Everyone is pretty much trying to convince Eren not to go through with the rumbling, but Eren basically says they have to kill him in order for that to happen. And finally, we get this giant action set piece where Eren decides to destroy the rest of the military forces coming from him with the Beast Titan. And the special ends when the Survey Corps members finally arrive. In terms of new music, we have Under the Tree, which is in the same vein as the rumbling, which makes sense because it was performed by the same band, and it's great. I honestly don't have much to say about Part 3, Part 1. Animation was the highest it's ever been, all of the emotional parts hit you as hard as they did in the manga, and all you want to know is how is this story going to end? We're finally here, it's the final season, Part 3, Part 2, the end of Attack on Titan, Shingeki no Kyojin. The final battle starts with the biggest action set piece we have ever had in the series. Armin ends up eaten by a titan and the rest of the team struggles with the Titan Shingeki no Kyojin. Now, in regards to what the fandom thinks, I mean, I've been looking at reactions, I've been looking on social media. In regards to the ending, it's about what you expect. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people are neutral. Same fans who originally didn't like the ending still hate the ending. Some people may have changed their perspective. There might be some people who've changed their mind and say, I don't hate the ending anymore, I actually love it, but those are few and far in between. I am curious to see what we'll be in like a year's time and all the hype has like died down and people can really think about what the ending meant to them. Anyway, I'm just gonna make a few points about the video. For starters, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of times where I say Mikasa instead of Mikasa. I know it's Mikasa, it's just sometimes when you're recording line after line you just forget about things like that, especially because I hear Mikasa all the time, so apologies for that. Second thing is regards to content. There is definitely a lot of stuff in the episodes I wanted to talk about, but again, I wanted to streamline it as best I could. There is definitely things I missed out. Like, I didn't even mention John and Reiner's crazy run at the end to blow up Eren's head. Like, I love that scene and the fact that we got the OST for it, but, again, I was just busy and I didn't think about it clearly enough at the time. So apologies for that again. I do love that scene. As well as many others I didn't talk about in the actual video. Yeah, I didn't even talk about the OP and ED that released for the final part. Those were both great, by the way. This point is not as important, but there were some AOT memes that I missed. I'm sorry, I just could not remember all of them. I even forgot about Yelena's face, and that one is literally staring you in the face. So sorry about the copyright filter. AOT is a hotbed for just getting stuff taken down. Same reason I couldn't play any of the music, which is sad because that is literally one of the best things about this anime. And now I'll just quickly talk about AOT and what it means to me. I started watching Attack on Titan in 2015 and I thought it was the greatest thing ever. Obviously, as I grew up, my opinions may have changed here and there, but I still genuinely think it is one of the best animes ever produced. Well, one of the best series ever produced, I should say. I literally did go from a teenager to an adult while this series was still going on, and it did help me get through a lot of hard times in my life, so no matter what anyone says about it, it will always hold a special place in my heart. As for what comes next, who knows? Isayama's worked hard, he deserves to go open his spa. I'm sure we'll get more from the actual franchise, but in terms of the story, it's over, so unless we get side stories, I'm not really sure what else they might do for that. Again, I am curious to see how opinions change over time, seeing as how we're not going to get any more AOT story content. Also, there was other extra stuff I could have talked about, like the Attack on Titan Junior High anime series, or the AOT High School manga series that Isayama was writing. Before the full manga, which I've never actually read and I should at some point. I didn't even get around to mentioning how relevant Attack on Titan is in pop culture. Every anime fan knows what Attack on Titan is, whether you're a casual, whether you're a weeb. Maybe you just got it recommended to you by someone who likes anime and it's your first anime. I've seen Attack on Titan be referenced outside of anime circles, so you know it's been significant. Anyway, this video has been long enough. I just want to say that AOT has been a huge part of my life, and I'm really sad that it's over, and I'm grateful that we ever got it in the first place.